Imagine it's the fourth week of winter. The stored food ran out 9 days ago. Your children haven't spoken since yesterday because talking costs energy, and everyone in the shelter understands that now. Outside, the snow hasn't stopped for 3 days. The hunting grounds are buried, the river is frozen to the bottom, and tonight, for the first time, you catch yourself looking at the oldest member of your family and doing a kind of math you will never say out loud. For most of human history, winter wasn't a season. It was a test. And the things people did to pass that test are the parts of our story we almost never talk about. Today, winter is an aesthetic. You watch the snow through double-glazed windows. Your biggest cold weather decision is which coat to wear. If the power goes out, it's an inconvenience with a phone number attached. But for a human being 20,000 years ago, the same snowfall you find beautiful was the beginning of a countdown. And to understand what they did to survive it, you first have to understand what winter actually does to a human being. It kills you in 3 ways, and only one of them is the cold. The first is the cold itself, and it's more treacherous than you think. A wet human loses body heat up to 25 times faster than a dry one. And hypothermia doesn't attack you, it negotiates. First you feel tired, then you stop thinking clearly. People freezing to death often begin removing their own clothes because their failing brain tells them they're burning hot. Some lie down in the snow, certain they'll rest for just a minute. Many never stand up again. The second is starvation, and winter starvation has a cruel trick inside it. Even if you found meat, lean winter animals could kill you anyway. Rabbit, for example, has protein but almost no fat, and a body running on lean meat alone begins to fail. Explorers later called it rabbit starvation. Ancient humans learned it thousands of years before nutrition had a name, which is why they smashed open bones for marrow and boiled them for grease. Archaeologists find layers of shattered, boiled bone fragments at Ice Age sites. That's not cooking. That's a starvation signature, pressed into the ground. And the third way winter kills you is other people. Winter compressed the world. Humans, predators, and hunger, all squeezed into the same small, dark spaces for months. When 30 desperate humans are trapped together with shrinking food, the group itself becomes dangerous. Every winter was a social test. Run in the dark, with no way out. Who eats first? Who works? Who is worth the calories they consume? And everyone in that shelter knew the test was being run, even if no one said it. Which brings us to the one job that stood between a group and all 3 deaths: the fire. For most of prehistory, making fire from nothing may have been beyond most people. Controlling a flame that exists and creating one from scratch are completely different skills. So fire was treated as something alive. Groups carried glowing embers sealed in horn and bark. A single coal passed from parents to children to grandchildren. When they found Otzi, the 5,000-year-old man frozen in the Alps, he was carrying a complete fire kit: flint, pyrite, tinder fungus. Even then, losing your fire was dangerous enough to carry equipment against it. And every night, while everyone slept, one person sat beside those coals, adding a stick, shielding the flame from the wind that came through every gap, splitting wet logs to reach the dry wood inside, because they knew a secret we've forgotten. That birch bark burns, even when it's soaked, listening to sounds beyond the light and deciding which ones mattered. The only thing standing between everyone they loved and the cold was that one person and a handful of embers they refused to let die. Every human alive today descends from an unbroken chain of people who won that fight every night for thousands of winters. But here's where the story goes somewhere most history videos won't follow, because fire and marrow were the survivable winters. The question nobody wants to ask is, what happened in the winters that weren't? The archaeological record answers, and it doesn't flinch. It starts with the animals. In famine winters, groups ate their dogs, the same dogs that hunted beside them, that slept against their children for warmth. Historical Arctic expeditions did the same with their sled teams and wrote about it in their journals with shaking hands. That was the first line that hunger crossed. It was not the last. At Gough's cave in England, researchers found human bones roughly 15,000 years old, with butchery marks identical to the ones on animal bones, and human skulls carefully worked into cups. At El Sidrón cave in Spain, a Neanderthal family group from around 49,000 years ago shows the same cut marks, on bones that also show signs of starvation. Scientists word it carefully. The evidence doesn't. In the worst winters, when the choice was the unthinkable, or extinction, some groups chose the unthinkable, and before you judge them from a heated room, understand that this never fully left us. In 1846, the Donner Party Modern people with wagons and rifles and Bibles were trapped by snow in the Sierra Nevada for one winter. Nearly half died, and the survivors did exactly what those Ice Age families did. The cold didn't ask them what was right, it asked them what was possible. That is the darkest thing winter taught our species. Not how to die, how to decide who gets to live. Because the hardest choices weren't about the dead, they were about the living. Food went to hunters before elders, to children before the injured, not from cruelty, from arithmetic. Every calorie was a vote on the group's future. Some accounts from historical Arctic peoples describe the old, in famine winters, choosing to walk into the snow so their grandchildren could eat. We can't verify every story, but the math they describe was real, in every frozen camp on Earth. And now, the turn that changes everything you just heard. Because if winter made humans capable of the unthinkable, it made them capable of something else too, and the evidence for it sits in the same caves. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, archaeologists found a Neanderthal man with a crushed eye socket, a withered arm, and injuries that should have killed him, who lived for decades. Someone fed him, someone kept him warm, through winters where every calorie was life. He survived because his group decided year after frozen year that he was worth it. At Romito Cave in Italy, a young man with severe dwarfism, unable to keep up with hunters, was cared for his entire life and buried with tenderness. Around 10,000 years ago, hold those two truths side by side. The same species that turned skulls into cups carried its broken and its weak through the deadliest winters on Earth. For years, at real cost. The darkness and the devotion came from the same place, a group deciding every single day knew what survival was worth and who it was for. They didn't survive because they were good, and they didn't survive because they were monsters. They survived because winter forced them to be both and to live with it. So what happened to us? We didn't become better people. We just stopped being tested. We built a world where no one has to choose. Between the fire and the dark, between the old and the young, between the unthinkable and the end. Their choices lived in their bodies, around their fires, in their silence. Ours are outsourced to a power grid and a supermarket. And maybe that's the real inheritance. Every impossible choice they made, the ones we honor and the ones we can barely speak about, ends the same way. It ends with you, warm, fed, alive. Never once asked to do the math they did. They carried the fire, the marrow, the weak, and the weight of what winter made them do. We're the ones who get to forget.